pray that as we come together in unity to work harder towards your kingdom, that these sessions will give us the skills we need, not only to talk to each other, but talk to people outside the church and build a stronger community that aims to bring your kingdom here on earth. Amen. Amen.
Okay, I'm going to use this microphone, I think. This is a pretty big microphone. Hi. Hi. How is everyone? Good. Thanks for coming back to church, right? We're bookended your day here. My name is Emily Swanson. So, a lot of you probably saw me this morning. I am the owner and president of the company called Holy Cow Consulting, and that is indeed our name. And we came up with that name because we started as a data company working with churches, and data's pretty boring sometimes. Not church data, of course, but we wanted to give a name that kind of said, you know, at the end of the day, when we go through everything with you, you say, holy cow, that is us, and gives us a pathway forward, okay? I am from Columbus, Ohio. I am a Buckeye, sorry about that. We're sorry to Indiana, by the way. I was just in Indiana last weekend and they gave me a whole bunch of crap, which I deserved. And I told them if we were gonna lose to anybody, I'm glad it was them. And so there's a lot of snow at my home, and so I'm not sad to be here, is what I'm telling you. So let's talk a little bit about expectations for today, because I think it's always important to know what we're getting into. So today, my job, my colleague Susan Cholish is not here. She wanted to be here with you all. She had surgery this last week, so I am here instead. So I apologize, because she's really cool and much better. So you just have to suffer through me this time. But she's going to be with you on the Wednesdays. So she's going to be zooming in on Wednesdays and going through workshops with you all. My job today is to talk you through what we need to keep in mind as we're going through conflict in congregations and how we can think about doing it well, building trust, building relationship, and thinking about differences. And then we're going to take some time at the end, and I can answer some questions you might have or thoughts you might have. So my job today is to lay some foundation work for you all for the work ahead on the Wednesdays with Susan, okay? So that's what we're going to do today. So as you're listening, I do want you to think about kind of what's resonating with you. Do you have any aha moments from what I'm saying where you think, I need to take this into the week and pray on it, or think about it at the Wednesday sessions together? And the other thing I want you to do before we get started is think about who is around you and what gifts they bring to this space. And I want you to really be prayerful about that, because at the end of the day, we all bring our brokenness, we all bring kind of the things we believe or think, and they're all flawed, all of it, right? We have our own echo chambers, we have all of those things. And so church is the one place where we can still be loved, even if we look at things differently in Christ, okay? So that's what we need to be rooted in. So when I talk about this, I like to we're on our fourth scripture today for you all, but it's from Romans. And this one really matters because it says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. That is our why. That's it. According to his purpose. Not my purpose, not your purpose. You know, it is God's purpose. And so once we lose that why and get off of that, we're off the rails, right? So I'm going to keep bringing us back to this scripture. So we work with a few hundred churches every year. My clicker may not work. We'll see what happens. Hold on just a minute. There we go. Look at it. Okay, it's just slow. We're going to let it warm up, apparently. One of the things we have to think about in church is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. So we work with a few hundred churches every year. There are stories that churches tell us, and they're pretty much the same stories over and over again. So this is what churches tell us. They want to know, how do we grow with more people? And then, how do we attract young people with kids and families? And then, how do we get more people involved because we're burnt out and we're tired? right? And we want kind of to get folks to come in and think about that. I keep walking into this thing. I feel like I'm a walker, sorry. And so as we think about this, we have to think, but what is the real story underneath all of this? And here's what it is. We mean, when we say these things, we want to grow with people, younger people, we mean, I want church to feel like before COVID, before we were smaller, before we were financially strapped, before we had less church staff, before we had families that had two-parent or single-parent working households. So church was the thing on Wednesday nights and Sundays, right? And before Sunday wasn't so heavily scheduled for families. So where we're thinking is a lot of rear windowing to begin with. And that's the story we tell ourselves. And so what happens is we say, you know, we might be having a tough time with each other, but you know what might fix us? Young people with children and families, right? Because I'm tired of doing everything. And also we need to keep growing, and we're worried about something dying, right? We're worried about the legacy of our church. What does it look like? So put that on a banner, and what does it look like? Hey, if you're young, come give us your time and money, right? That's right? So, but that's really the story churches are telling themselves. And you're laughing because you know you kind of said this somewhere deep inside at one point or another. So, or shallowly, or up at the top, right? So what we've got to do is move always from being a survival congregation where we seek resources simply to prolong the life of the church, to legacy, where we're maximizing the impact of the church in the years of the ministry that remain and beyond. However long that is. That could be, for some churches, that's 2 years. For some churches, that's 50 to 100, however many years. Whatever that means, if we stay in survival mode, where we say things to ourselves, if we don't deal with this conflict, we're going to lose people and everything's going to end. That's not a legacy mode. A legacy mode says we want to move through these tough things because we want to be a church that's building meaningful relationships in Christ according to his purpose, right? Because anything less is, if we are refusing to have effective change because we're in survival mode while absorbing resources, which means money, time, whatever that is, it is a failure of discipleship. So you can't stay there, okay? You with me? Yes. Okay. So I always said, I was an English major many, many years ago, and I said I would never quote Dante in anything because that sounds really, really highfalutin and ridiculous. And yet here I am. But Dante wrote, in the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself within a dark wood where the straight way was lost. And what this speaks to is not we're starting the journey lost, but we're in the middle of it. And that's where we are as church. We're in the middle of a journey that we've been on together, and we kind of have lost that straight way. And there's a couple things here to note. If we know that, we're ahead of the game already, right? You know, gosh, where are we headed together? We've kind of lost where we're going. But again, we know that if we do it according to his purpose, we can figure that out together. And that was my Dante quote for the day. So everyone know I had a literary quote in my head. This is a yes and presentation, so if you start to feel kind of that anxiety where, but what about this? I am not saying one thing has to happen and another thing doesn't. I want you to think yes and. I find when I talk to churches, they'll say, but what about this and this? Let's just assume it's yes and for now. I am not saying we're giving anything up. I'm not saying we're getting rid of anybody or anything, right? I'm not saying that. But it's a yes and. What if we did this and continued this other thing, right? So we got to keep that in our mind. It's survival mode puts us in the scarcity mindset of, oh gosh, what's going away? And it's a yes and. So I need you to stick with me through that. So the three things we need to be thinking about here at St. Peter's is creating a church where we embrace people with authentic welcome and meaningful connection. Not just a cursory, hey, how's it going? But really authentic welcome and meaningful connection, because that's what people need. We also need to embrace and adapt with people in all seasons of life and help them find their best selves equipped and used in ways that empower them to make a meaningful contribution to the world. So the first one, authentic welcome and meaningful connection, and people in all seasons of their lives to help them be their best. And then where we embrace the fact that conflict can be a means towards better solutions rather than further wounding. So we're gonna touch on all three of these things today. So let's talk about welcome and meaningful connection. If we can't do this well, we cannot do anything well, okay? So, because it's really all about, if I don't have a relationship with you, we can't have a good conversation where we build trust, where we're gonna, and if anything kind of breaks that, we don't have the trust to move forward. We haven't built a relationship, so we have to do that first. So what does it mean in church to have a welcome and meaningful connection together? Churches are built on relationships. Mother Rachel said today something along these lines in her sermon today. I always laugh because I will tell churches, every church has conflict because of the people. And the sad thing is we can't have church without people, so it's this catch-22 all the way around, right? So we have to remember, church isn't about a building, it's about the people. And when after COVID we asked people, what did you miss during this time? I did a whole pilot with 90 churches. It was over and over and over again, the people. Not the building, not our worship service, not the things we do together, the people. We miss each other. We know right now that we are going through a huge crisis of loneliness. And this applies to folks in this room too. We know that young adults from the ages 18 to 24 are 79% are going to say they feel lonely. That is much higher than our 66 and older folks. And a lot of these folks, the younger folks, are living with other people. They are not building meaningful relationships. They just don't have that capacity or the bandwidth, and they don't know where to find that. We also know that younger folks report that 42% of them are reporting they always feel left out. The CDC issued something over a year and a half ago saying that we are in a crisis of loneliness, specifically for our younger folks when we're thinking about that. And that doesn't mean that older folks also don't need this care, but remember, or back around, how do we create an authentic, belonging, and meaningful relationships for everyone? What does that look like? According to the CDC, people live longer if they have friendships. So, we know that there's an increase in death by heart disease and in death by cancer if we do not have daily community interactions. So this all leads us to think about kind of the recommendations from the CDC and all kinds of mental health institutions is we need to begin reimagining and reweaving our social relationships in healthcare, schools, and many other institutions. What's another institution? Church. Right. According to his purpose, right? So this is where we have some opportunities to think about it. So, dogs are always really friendly, I think. High quality hospitality plans, and hospitality is as soon as someone knows you go to this church, it starts. If you're out in the community and I hear you talking to someone and I know you go to St. Peter's, I'm gonna start watching you. What's going on with that person, right? So they have to address how we care for each other. That starts there. You can be as welcoming as you want, but folks will feel very quickly if you don't care for each other. They can tell. You want to make sure we talk about how do we care for the community as a whole in the church and externally as well. How do we welcome? How do we invite people to do things? And not just to come to worship, but to do things within the body that we do. Ministries, leadership, all of those things. And how can we build something that lasts together? So, let's talk real quick about why don't people attend church? This is a big wondering that people ask me about all the time, and I say we don't have to wonder because we have information on this. The top 3 reasons that people don't attend is they don't believe or found other ways to meet spiritual needs. Okay, we're going to set that one aside for right now. They're afraid of being judged or not accepted. And then the third one is they're afraid of getting it wrong. And so when we're a church that's kind of going through some breaks in trust, some conflicts, some things that we've experienced here, we might be doing some of these things, the 2 and the 3, right? Where we might be judging, having trouble accepting folks, or we might have folks feeling like they're getting it wrong, and that feeling is really hard. So, church hospitality starts in a diner, and I said this to you before, once someone knows you go to St. Peter's, we start looking at you. I was in a diner when my son, I've been talking about my son Henry twice today, he's gonna be really mad. He's 13 now, but when he was 4, we were in a diner, and he was sitting in the bench beside me, flipping around as kids do, and I kept saying, please sit down. And this older couple behind me said, the woman said, he reminds me of the kid in church yesterday who completely ruined worship for me. That's a failure of hospitality. Now I didn't say, do you know what I do for a living? But, gosh, I would feel really judged at that church, right? Because my kids aren't going to sit still when they're 4. I mean, if someone had a 4-year-old that sat still, just let me know. I want to hear how you did. So just remember that. So we always have to ask these questions. What do people see when they leave our building? So when we leave the building out St. Peter's, do we look happy? Do we look like we just checked, like we clocked out and got out of there? What do people see? Do they see us talking? Do they see us kind of being really kind of thinking about where God is flowing through us into the world? What do people see when we're working on our church grounds? When we're out and about out here, what do people see us doing? I live in a walkable community with lots of churches, and I'll tell you, when I see people working on the grounds, they are not happy. I mean, so it doesn't make me want to jump right in and be a part of anything. So just remember these things. What do people experience when they see us doing ministry? And what does our website say about who we are? If your website says we're welcoming, you better do it, right?
Right.
That's really important. And where do people first get greeted when they're coming in? Kind of thinking about not just worship, but when we host things, all those things. What are those touches we need to do? Why does this matter when we're a church that's kind of struggling with each other a little bit? Because if we do this genuinely, we're connecting with each other too and building deeper relationships. We also need to take the I'm stupid feel out of church. It's something I say a lot, but the afraid of getting it wrong part really gets to people. What I love about what you all do in your service is, I'm kind of doing, looking at things while I'm sitting in your pew for 3 services. You have that really neat handout, and it's for kids, but it tells me what to do too. Because I go to a lot of Episcopal churches all over the country, and you all do things a little bit different everywhere. Just a little bit. And it helps. And the same is true kind of with the way you do your bulletin. So helping folks know where to go, where the bathroom is, if they need to leave with the kid, what happens. All of those things make a big difference, because the last thing we want to get in the way for folks is feeling like they're getting it wrong. Because that's not why Jesus came. It wasn't to say, get in a building together and worship correctly. That's not actually in Scripture. So we want to make sure we're letting folks know it's okay. If your kid comes and screams, that's okay. If you're not feeling well, we'll help you get what you need, right? So just keeping an eye on each other is really important. One of the things I learned from churches very quickly, this happens a lot. But what I learn is, not from the Martins, what do people around them do? And if you let the Martins do this to new people, what other things do you let slide? That's about accountability. So the Martins can sit somewhere else for one Sunday, they're going to be okay. But I'll tell you, it will change the newcomer's life. They will not come back. Unless they're really tenacious, right? But I know I wouldn't, and I'm in church all the time. So it's just something to keep in mind. I don't worry as much about the Martins. I worry about what you all do. And that's what I watch for. So after we kind of think about how can we have this authentic way that we care, we also want to make sure we understand generations and the changing church too. Why does this matter for kind of where you are as church? Because there might be things you're seeing in behaviors that actually haven't thought about generationally as well. And so last year I took over 11,000 responses in our churches across the country in all regions and did a generational study. And I want to talk a little bit about what I learned. So the first thing is, I want to explain why we need to know this. First of all, you all told us in your CAT, just like everyone, we want to attract families with children and youth. So you got to know what that means. Most church leadership doesn't know what different age groups want and need in the church. And I mean all the way from the traditionalists to the Gen Zs. We just aren't clear kind of on what all that needs to be. Church is one of the rare instances in life where we can experience a multi-generational community organically. It's one of the last places. And as people move around the country more and more, we lose families, right? We lose grandparents because they're just somewhere else. And as we become more kind of transient in our lives, we need to find those relationships. And we can't get them anywhere else in a healthy way that's organic and rooted in God according to his purpose, right? So it's really important. And we need to stop guessing. Again, I'll say this a lot, but folks will say, I wonder, and I'll say, oh, we know, we have the answers to some of this. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about generations and what drives each one. And I want you to think about your generation, but also people you interact with in the church who might be in a different generation. Traditionalists are 80 years and over. I didn't get into birth years because folks get all, I don't want to talk about that. So this isn't going to be true for every single person, but this is what the studies find. Okay, so just go with me generally. They're loyal to their employers when they worked in institutions and they stuck with it. They respect authority, appreciate one-on-one interaction, that's really important to them. They value consistency and reliability. And giving is determined by if it's a reliable institution or a known quantity. So for your traditionalists, they always gave to the Red Cross. I'm not saying that's the thing, but because it's the Red Cross. You always bought a Ford because it's a Ford, right? You went to the Presbyterian church on the hill because you always went to the Presbyterian church. That's just what you did. Not you all, obviously. That's how you flowed. You really looked at you stuck with your same job for a very long time, often. Not always, but often. Let's talk about baby boomers. Did you say no, you didn't stick with your job? She did not stick with her job. She was out of there. All right. Baby boomers are about 61 to 79 years of age at this point. Working was the center there, and still is for folks. That they value individualism and self-assertiveness. That was kind of the call of the baby boomer generation. They are duty-driven model of giving time and money, meaning, okay, this is where I'm going to give it because this is what I'm expected to do and I will do it that way. They support traditional, well-established organizations, so somewhat like the traditionalists where we really think about, okay, these are things I can trust and will give my money to over and over again. They do not need to feel connected to give in the same way as the younger generation. So meaning I don't need to know the people we're giving money to over in Uganda. I just know it's a good mission, right? And then they give the highest amount of financial giving in churches across the country right now. But they also have the most money. Right. So I want to be careful here. Gen X. Is anyone else Gen X? I'm Gen X. Woo! All right, okay. 45 to 60, that's all we get. Okay, 45 to 60 years of age. This is the generation that a lot of people forget exists. That's fine, we're just fine. We began with a focus on kind of starting to think about that work-personal life balance a little bit differently. Part of that was from the baby boomer generation laying the really good foundational work for women to kind of be in the workplace and fighting for that. And so Gen X started to see an even bigger shift, right? So baby boomers started it and it kept going. Yeah. We value self-sufficiency and flexibility, wanting informal spaces to connect. So, kind of thinking about not necessarily being told exactly how we need to have conversations, how we need to connect, but really having that available and we're willing to be flexible about what we do. Must feel a personal connection to give and direct impact on the target community. It is not enough for Gen Xers to just hear you say, we've always given to the United Way because the United Way is a reliable thing. Now the question is, who does it help? And how can I see it? And what is that story? And nonprofits have had to completely pivot how they talk now because it can't anymore just be kind of their logo and tagline. It has to be, here's the story. Here's who it helped. Here's what it did. So this starts a shift in how people give. They are the highest amount of hours volunteering in church across the country. So as we think about this, they're giving a lot of time. Your baby boomers are giving them more money, okay? Millennials. I know everyone grumbles about the millennials. They're great. 29 to 64 years of age. 44. I I made that up. 41. That was a test. This was looking at the 29 to 44 years of age. They need social political values matched in both work and personal life. They will not do things that are unethical to them. They are not comfortable with that. Not that they won't do them, but it's very hard. It's a big disconnect for them. They want to make sure that the people they work for, the companies they support, all of those things really match with what they believe. They value empathy and interpersonal relationships. They want to be seen for who they are, not what you expect them to be. They give when there is a peer-to-peer connection to give. So meaning, if I come to you and I say, hey, I'm going to ask you, this is what I know, what we've done and the work we've done, and then they'll say, oh, okay, I could get in on that, right? But otherwise, it's too big of a vast story that doesn't connect well for them. Money and time must be personally connected or they really won't invest. So we go back to personal relationships. If we don't have authentic relationships with millennials, they will not join in ministry, and they will not give money. So we have this expectation already. So if you talk to baby boomers, they will say, we've been doing this for a really long time, these ministries, and I'm tired, and I want someone else to step up. And millennials say, no one has talked to me about what it means, or what this looks like, or how to, and no one's really just asked me or said I can show you how to do it. So there's a disconnect already, right? It makes it harder. And then Gen Z. I have 2 Gen Zs in my house, 13 to 28 years of age. They value truth, exploration, and identity within their own context. You have seen this. It's hard, it's complicated. But they're feeling themselves out. And this is a generation that's still growing up, right? If you remember your 20s, I know everyone remembers it fondly, but I really encourage you to think about it and think, those were some hard times where I was really figuring, you know everything, quote unquote, but you don't, right? And so kind of figuring that out. They need community that prioritize mental health, open, and honest communication. I have heard from so many Gen Zs that they have been in church meetings where they've tried to talk about mental health things and folks will say, you just need to get over it. Because we aren't, because they get shut down. Because they have different words or different ways they talk about it, and we're not always used to that. But then, they don't want to be in leadership anymore, right? And so when giving time or money, they need to see impact so they know it is making a difference. So it's not enough that we're doing this thing that might make a difference. I need to, again, see what the direct results are. So giving, again, to these faraway places that we do isn't going to work for them at all. Okay? You all with me?
Yes.
So we want to remember all of this because if we really are truly thinking about younger folks, which I don't think we should always be focused on, by the way, but I feel like I have to address it. They want to be seen and loved for who they are. Someone has a very important phone call. They want to feel personally connected with the congregation. Who are my people? Where do I sit? Who knows me? Does anyone care about me? To feel an informal welcome that is genuine and authentic. And what I mean by that is not, I have a script that I will now read to you that welcomes you in. Not like that, right? But truly, actually how I was welcomed this morning, right? Truly. They need to be a part of a group that values mental health and honest conversation. They can see right through you. It's terrible. I live with them. It's serious. And a congregation that is a place in the world that's meaningful. That's what they're looking for. So I want you to keep all of this in the back of your head, because when we run into conflict, if we're not paying attention to some of these generational things too, we're missing out some key differences that might get in the way. But if we pay attention to it and even say things like, you know what, I might have said that wrong, but I want to learn. So let's learn together here, right? It's a very good way to kind of move through those types of things. So we just talked about this. These differences affect how we give our money. You might have noticed giving shifts over the years because we keep talking about it the same way over and over again. If we don't talk about it differently, if we don't tell stories about what happens under the roof, and instead we're just asking for money for the roof, then we miss out on what connects folks to give it. How we give our time. So for your baby boomers and traditionalists, they might give their time just because it's their turn. Gen X won't do that. They want to hear, will it be meaningful? Will it? And then even your millennials and Gen Zs want to hear, gosh, when I engage my time, are there going to be folks there that care about me so we can work together in a good way, right? It's very different. What motivates us to engage, what makes us want to be in leadership, and how we feel impactful. All those things really build a foundation for who we can be as church, and it's important. So we always want to be able to answer these questions. How are we welcoming all generations? so that they feel valued and a part of what we do together? How are we listening to the needs of all generations and responding? And how are we managing our expectations of what younger people can give and how they can give it? Millennials do not have money, friends. They don't. They can't buy houses. I mean, and also they don't have time. You gotta remember, I mean, we're stretched, right? So there's so many things, we don't have that societal, like, we're gonna block off this time for, you know, these things. It doesn't work that way anymore. So we've gotta be really mindful of that. And then, what can we give each other in community that we can't get anywhere else? Which you heard from me this morning. And what is it? Meaningful relationships in Christ, where we really see each other. Okay. So church is changing because we are changing, and we need to be able to meet the needs of the people we are serving. So if you stay stuck and you don't adapt in the way you think about things, you won't be able to move forward, and then we're back to survival mode, right? Okay. So this last part we're going to talk about is trust and conflict management. It's a tiny, tiny topic that we can right. I was with a church last fall in Missouri and doing some listening sessions. They had a lot of conflict, and one of the conflicts was around a green carpet. And it was about the shade of the green carpet. But you see, there's always something else, right? It's not about the green carpet. It's about who got to pick the shade of the green carpet. Yes. And what did we do with the old carpet? Now, the funny part is, I told this story to a church I was working with in Massachusetts who also had conflict, and they said, we also have a green carpet. And I thought they were joking, and I said, oh, of course, everybody does. And they said, no, we really have a green carpet conflict. So I only specialize in green carpet conflict. But I bring this up because it's not about the carpet. It's something else. So when we stay up here, dancing around about the green carpet and what shade it is, we miss out what's happening underneath. We know through all of these studies that before we can do anything else, we must build trust with each other. Trust is the basis for everything. Trust each other again and again. When the trust level gets high enough, people transcend apparent limits, discovering new and awesome abilities for which they were previously unaware. If we don't have this, we cannot move through conflict. And then we can't skip and then try to do good work together. It just doesn't work. And so what happens is time and time again, we try to move forward without building trust, and we keep running into the same walls over and over again. We keep talking about the green carpet, what shade it is, right? So let's talk about how trust breaks. And this is where I really want you to think about, does any of this resonate with your experiences that you've had here or at other churches or just in life? Trust is broken through any or all of these things. Lack of transparency. I don't know what's happening. Now, I've never had a church tell me they get too much information, so that's always a thing. But we fill silence with guessing. I call that the parking lot conversations. So after this meeting, I expect you all to have a parking lot conversation about it. That's fine. But what happens is, if I don't know what's going on, I start to fill it with things that I'm guessing about, right? And that's not helping. Inconsistency. When we're told by leadership that things are going to happen and then it doesn't happen, right? Saying something different to different people too, we call that triangulation. Not doing what you said you would do over and over again. One break isn't that, but it's really when we're consistently being inconsistent, right? Leading with the win-lose mentality. When I see churches that vote on things and 51% win on that thing, whatever it is, everyone loses. Because what happens with 49%? So in any room you're in church, you have to remember, if we walk into any conversation with the win-lose mentality, like I'm right and you're wrong, we've lost already. Breaking confidentiality. So if I tell you, you can tell me something, I mean with rare exception, right? Where there are extreme things where we do have to break confidentiality, but making sure we're being very thoughtful about how we do it. Lack of follow-through, where we're told that something's gonna happen and then it doesn't. Why did we even ask to begin with, right? Lack of accountability. So something goes wrong over and over again and we say, what's happening? why is no one saying anything or stepping up? Why do the Martins keep standing over that same pew, right? Every week. And continuing to do things that have been proven not to work, lack of listening, or unethical behavior by folks in the recent past or even currently. So when you look at this list, have you experienced any of this in this congregation? Yeah. Okay. So that is how trust breaks. Are you laughing because it's a funny list, isn't it? Yeah. You okay? Okay. So as we think about this, what's important to remember is any one of these things breaks trust. And so when we remember that triangle, we got to start all over again. And that's okay. It's just important to name and know. What we see when there's a lack of trust in a church, so as a consultant or your leaders, this is what we see and kind of are signs that there's a lack of trust. Small groups splinter out periodically, so we start to lose people here and there. The congregation stays intact but is submissive to a small but manipulative power group. So there are folks who make decisions, not your vestry necessarily, but there might be some folks that control decision making in their own ways. And they'll punitively say, well, then I'm not going to help, or I'm not going to do it, or I'm not going to tithe, right? Staff change is rapid. Change is stalled and change agents are punished, meaning we try to make changes and folks say, see, didn't work, I knew it wouldn't work, right? Some people are easily hurt, meaning they get hurt easily because they've been hurt and we don't have trust, right? So if we walk into a room and we start talking at people and they get hurt, part of that is we didn't have the trust to begin with, right? There's blame or false criticism. So kind of, again, we're looking for who messed up. Some are apt to search and destroy. So all at the forefront of the effort to control and secure immediate relief of anxiety. So it kind of becomes this, I'm going to take this down because it's the only thing I can control, right? So as we think about all of that, one thing I cannot encourage enough is beware of echo chambers. This is when you get together with the people who agree with you in this church and you say, let's all agree together over here. And we start to see camps, right? Make sure that when we go back to that list before those breaks are happening in trust, we don't then just sit with our spouse. My spouse agrees with everything I say, so I know that's my attitude. But it's really important to make sure we're really careful about this, because this is where things break down too, right? We do this in life too. Echo chambers are also how our social media logarithms happen. I mean, it's all kinds of things, right? This is really important. So, okay, so we've talked about we want to build authentic relationships. We want to think generationally about how we're caring for each other. We also want to be mindful of the fact that we have broken trust in this congregation. There's some trust breakage. So how do we rebuild? So I want to talk about this, and then the workshops you're going to go through are going to help you do some of this work, okay? You all surviving this? Yes. Okay. Rebuilding trust must transform in threes. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it involves the church leadership, it involves you all individually, and it involves the congregation. If only one of this works, then it doesn't work at all. If the leaders do work and you all aren't a part of it, it doesn't work. It has to be inside of us according to his purpose, right? And then it has to be that we work together alongside of each other as a congregation, and that the leaders are helping us do it too. Conflict management really looks like being ready. So at all times, we have to make sure we're moving through conflict well. I can't tell you how much I wish we had these tools before we run into the hard thing. Churches tend to wait until we've had the tough thing that broke down the trust. And actually, it's biblical. In Proverbs, we're called to sharpen our wits by having good conversation. That isn't us creating an echo chamber, but really sharpening our wits through conversation and conflict in a healthy way. Sometimes people don't like the word conflict and they ask me to use a different word. I'm still going to use the word conflict, okay? Growth-driven to disconnect or division-driven. So we have to make sure when we have conflict, it's growth-driven. We're growing together and we're learning. That doesn't mean we look at things exactly the same, but I'm going to listen to you and then I'm going to say, well, this is what I think. And if we don't agree, it's growth-driven that I say, I still care about you. I'm going to pray for you. Let's pray for each other. And we'll come back around and have coffee even if we don't agree on this. If it's about disconnect or division driven, then we've gone beyond, right? So it's really important that we remember conflict can be managed. The other thing I want to name is triangulation and anxiety management. When I work with churches, they love the triangulation game. I can't tell you how often I get a call from one person who then says, I talked to this person. That's no good. So when one person has conflict with the other and they both come to you, you sit down in threes. That's actually biblical too. So having those conversations is really important. How do we build trust? There's actually a whole map on how to do it. And that's, Stephen Covey came up with this. We do it through credibility and behavior. And credibility means character and competence. So we have integrity when we lead. We have intent, kind of thinking about letting folks know we care about them. It's no good otherwise. We're authentic, and the agenda is win-win. We're not going to vote 59% to 49%, right? We're going to talk about how can we all get through this together. And then the second part is behavior. What do we do and how do we do it? First of all, we have to listen to each other. That's the beginning. So when you think about how do we do that, we want to make sure that the leaders are listening to what you all need and you're listening to each other. Then we need to talk straight. We're not going to dance around what we need to do. That's why I won't use a different word than conflict. Conflict is the word, right? Just because it makes us uncomfy doesn't mean it's not the right word. But we need to talk straight and say what we mean. We need to be transparent. There is very few decisions that church leadership makes that can't be shared. We're not in the CIA. We really can share a lot of them. Now there's some things we have to be careful about, like personnel decisions, but overall, we can be pretty transparent. We need to signal where we're headed together. When you are in your car and you put on your blinker, you are not telling yourself where you're going. I mean, I hope you know where you're going. You are telling everyone around you, this is where we're going. And the same is true in church leadership. We have to say, I'm talking to you straight. This is where we're headed. This is what's going to happen next. And then we're going to follow up. And if I do something different, that messes up with keeping commitments. Now that doesn't mean as leaders we might not make mistakes and say, oh, that wasn't a good plan. That's not going to work. But then we tell you because we're being transparent, right? And I'll tell you, a church that cannot forgive failure cannot move forward. So we have to be willing to learn by failure. I own this business. I've had some really great ideas that have failed miserably. I mean, despite my best efforts. And that's okay, because that's how I learn, right? Anyone who does that knows. That's how I learn best, is by trying something and saying, why didn't this work? What do I need to do different? It's really, really important. And then we need to extend trust. Meaning, at the end of the day, I want to trust that you're coming to the table with the best intentions too. And if I don't extend that and I'm just kind of telling you what to do, then I'm missing out on this ability to show you with my behavior that we're going to work forward together. So these are the ways we build trust together. You with me? Okay. So let's talk about healthy pathways for churches to build trust and move through conflict. I hope you're going to have this all memorized by the end of today. You're going to get this PowerPoint. We want to make sure that our leaders understand the systematic nature of anxiety and conflict. So these are some of the things you're going to do in your workshops and talk about. We want to equip leaders, and youth too, staff and members of the congregation with an understanding of emotional systems. There's actually a book called Church as an Emotional System, or a Family System, that's what it is. It's all about kind of how we work together. It is true. And then with the skills in conflict transformation. We're going to address individual conflicts by coming alongside one another and doing the work of reconciliation. I say this all the time, and I learned it from my colleague Susan, which is be hard on issues and easy on people. It's okay to draw a line, but gosh, be gentle with each other. When conflict does occur, engage with it directly, with care and grace as an opportunity for mutual learning. When we run into conflict with each other, the grace part to me is remembering that underneath it is something else. When people come at you angry, it's something else underneath. It's hurt, it's It's disappointment, it's frustration, it's fear, it's anxiety. It's not just anger. That's not the whole thing. So always remember that. Intentionally begin an asset-framed congregational narrative. What do I mean by that? I mean, what do you have in abundance at St. Peter's? Do we talk about that enough? What are the things we have? We have a group of 70 plus people who came to this meeting. We have that in abundance. That's really neat. We have this beautiful space where we can share kind of all of these experiences together. That's a part of your abundance. And then develop leaders and followers who embrace the purpose and mission of the congregation and have clarity around what that is. And if we don't have a mission, then we just want to make sure we're at least starting with according to his purpose, right? That's why we're here. That's our one. So when we're thinking about this, it's really looking like this. The congregational transformation through conflict and thinking about how we're going to build trust is anytime we commit to a culture shift, it must involve everyone. So no one person can do this alone. So if you leave here today and you think, I'm not going to come to the other workshops because the leaders have got this, you've missed out on the whole thing, okay? We all have to do this together. This is your church. Your clergy will come and go. They're important. But you're the church. What you build here is up to you. Motto becomes, kind of when we do this, we must love the whole of the congregation and each other even when we don't agree and even when we don't see things exactly the same. We have to have spaces where we can do that in this world. And in this country, we absolutely need it right now. And then, what do we love about our congregation and what are we good at together? We want to make sure we're having those conversations. So we need to flow through this type of transformation. And so, kind of I end as I began, which is what do we need to be a church that's healthy? We need an authentic, welcome, and meaningful connection. We need a way that we're dealing with people in all seasons of life and helping them find their best selves. And with conflict that can be a means towards better solutions. That's where we want to head together. So, this is where we begin building that story. It's the legacy I want you all to have kind of as you move forward from there. So, kind of just think for a minute, and then I'm going to take questions. And Susan is on here with me on Zoom, so I want to make sure that she can answer questions too. But just as you're thinking about this, if there's something that you want to take away from this, something that made you go, or that's a great idea, or gosh, I can't wait to eat later. I don't know what it is you're going to take from this. But just remember, again, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. Get out of the way of that when you can, okay? And that's a cow. So, kind of as we finish up, we've got I'm here for as long as y'all want to hang. But does anyone have thoughts or questions, things that resonated with you? And I will walk around with the mic if that's helpful, or kind of things you want to mention, or, gosh, I keep running into that. Anybody have a question or thought? Comment, concern? Yes?
One of the early graphics where 79% of young people are lonely.
Yes.
How much of that do you think has to do with social media? I get my social media by using my thumbs. I don't go out and talk to people and
Okay.
have real interaction.
So the question was, just for folks on Zoom, how much of the loneliness of younger people is because of social media? There are different studies on that, and so I don't have a definitive data answer for that. I think part of that is there. I don't think we know the effect of COVID still. So our kids were home for almost 2 years solid without connection, and I don't know what that lasting effect will be. So I think that's part of it. Some of the kids miss their college days. Remember your college days where you made friendships and they were home during those times. So there's lots of pieces there. So I don't know how much is social media. Some of it's COVID. Some of it's a mix of both. I think it's hard to know. So I don't have a straight answer for you. So that was me dancing and saying, don't know. But there are lots of things at play there I think we have to keep in mind. Yeah.
This may sound like kind of a naive question. But
You don't get to qualify.
I'm only, because we have experienced the conflict within the congregation. How much of that conflict plays a part, I mean, that specific conflict to our congregation, how much of that plays a part to the process that we're going to be going through now? Or is it just we're starting from scratch and we learn to be better with each other?
So will we be talking about the conflict itself, is what you're kind of, are we gonna be dealing with the conflict, or are we just gonna move ahead, is what you're asking, right? Susan, can you hear that? Okay, is there a way we can share Susan on here, or no?
Yeah, you should, you just stop sharing your.
Hold on just a minute, I'm gonna stop sharing I'm gonna do some technology, Susan.
There she goes.
Yeah, I can hear you, let's see.
Make sure you hit the rally bar as your microphone.
Oh, yeah, hold on, Susan, I need to change it's there, it's on the rally bar.
Yeah, let me see if I can turn it.
Okay, she's full, Susan, you know how good I am. He's working on it.
Try it out. Talk, Susan.
Okay, Susan, give it a roll. No,
It's coming through your machine?
it's coming through my computer, but it should be sexy. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Try again.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hey, Susan, the question was, as you're moving through the workshops, you know, there's conflict at St. Peter's around particular things. Will you be discussing those things as they work together, or will it just be moving forward?
Say that again. It was a little garbled, Emily.
Okay, the question was, as we're kind of doing the workshops moving forward, will we be talking about some of the conflict that's happened at St. Peter's, or are we just gonna move forward, kind of building a different path forward and not talking about those issues?
I don't think we can build a path forward unless we talk about the issues. You know, we have limited time in the workshops, but I want to give time to people who want to talk about those issues. And if we need to continue work around those issues offline of these 3 workshops, I think there's an openness to doing that. I don't think, I mean, in my experience, to just be able to say, well, we've had some conflicts, we're learning some skills, and now we're going to move on, doesn't hit the nail on the head in terms of people's ability to heal and reconcile from the conflict.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Other questions, thoughts of, yes, hold on.
I have a question about the national church and the demographics you put up. Young people have a different opinion than those of us that are in the senior set. And then people in between. Do we move the church to fit other demographics? Or what about the young people today who are now fascinated by religion? Some in the Catholic faith going to different services. How do we adapt to that?
Okay. So the question, Susan, and I can answer it, but was around thinking about how are we called to kind of adapt to younger generations? How do we adapt to kind of how they're looking at things differently? What does that look like? Do you want to answer that question, or would you like me to?
Well, why don't you go ahead, and I can add to it. I have a thought. Sure.
I think before we start thinking that way at St. Peter's, we have to deal with kind of the underlying issues that we have to begin with and building trust and conflict. What I will tell you though, as we become the best, vital congregation we can be at St. Peter's, then we can start thinking creatively about kind of how we adapt. What are the things we might need to let go of and expand on? How can we move? I want to be clear was saying, you know, when I look at the demographics of who we want to reach, it might be people in their 50s and 60s. There's nothing wrong with that. We go to retirement communities and folks will say, we just need young families with children and youth, and I say, what? So the only reason I talked about the generational piece is not because you have to push towards younger generations, but what I'm saying to you is, I hear a lot, I don't feel heard when I go from younger folks, or I hear older folks say things like, there's just a disconnect there, and so I think we just have to be mindful. So that's why I bring it up. But I do think what I want to see for you all is that you build a healthy foundation first, where we can be in a good place together. And then that's what attracts other people to want to be a part of who we are at St. Peter's, right? Susan, what would you add?
The piece I would add, and the question just brought me to a memory of last fall working with a church, and there were a number of people in the meeting, including 4 millennials. And here I am with gray hair, and one person asked the question, well, Susan, what do we do to attract young people and understand them? And I said, well, you have 4 millennials in this group right now. I think they would love to answer that question instead of have me answer it. I mean, the point is, be curious, and don't be afraid to ask young people what they think about church, what they're looking for in church. They'll answer that question, and with a lot of energy and integrity. So I think we just need to be curious and in a, just a learning capacity from them.
Other questions? Yeah.
Hi, I'm going to plead a little ignorance here. I guess my question gets back to what is it that brought us all here today? So when I saw the program, Belonging Beyond Differences, I thought, oh, this is great, because there's a lot of discord in the outer community, world, whatever, as you haven't noticed. And so we're going to be building skills on how to navigate that. And then sitting here, I'm hearing, oh, no. There's conflict in this church that we need to learn about, grow from, resolve. And again, I'm going to plead ignorance. I'm not even aware of what we're talking about. And then number 3 is, oh, by the way, we want to grow the church. And I was like, oh, hold it, whoa, those are like 3 really different things.
Sure.
So, and I don't know if this is a question for you, Emily. If something in the write-up said this related back to the survey and the data in the survey, so there might be something that somebody else can talk to.
Yeah.
What brought us here?
Yeah, okay. Susan, did you hear that?
Yeah, I did. A couple of things. I think some of what we experience in the church as conflict is a microcosm of what's happening in our communities and in our country and in the world. And my answer goes back to today's readings, that Emily and Rachel preached on. And I think the question in the readings is, what witness will we make? And we're going to talk about that a little bit in the first workshop. And part of that witness that we make is, as a community of faith, how do we handle our differences? It's a wonderful place to practice skills, to learn new skills of handling difference, and being a witness into our world about a different way of being. And so I think we may be talking local, but but all of those things emanate out from St. Peter's into your community and your world. And if we become the witness that we're asked to be in the gospel today, then I don't see why the church won't grow. Because people will say, just like the old movie When Harry Met Sally, I want what they have.
And Susan, just to ask directly, though the data, when you did the data review, it indicated that there are folks that were feeling there's a level of conflict in the congregation that needs resolved, correct?
Say that again.
The data, the CAT results, part of this is coming from the CAT results, which shows there is a level of conflict that needs to be resolved within St. Peter's, correct?
That's correct. I mean, the conflict management index was the one of a few, but the one that really stood out in terms of there's something to address here. And, you know, it can be at so many levels, given what you've gone through in your own diocese, how that has impacted you as a church. You are a very theologically diverse congregation, and how does that impact your relationships with each other and how you look at what is the role of this congregation? And there could be many, many other levels. We're just hoping that the insights and skills that you'll be exposed to will help you unpack those conflicts in new ways, and will bring about some healing and reconciliation.
Okay, I have another question from Ken.
I guess my biggest question is, for 2 years I've heard about this conflict.
You'll have to speak
Where's
louder.
the microphone? Where's the microphone?
Go ahead.
What is the conflict?
So
Has
Ken-
anybody ever identified what the conflict is? Because when I go out to work on a job, if I need a chainsaw, I'm not gonna take a pickaxe. And until we can identify what we're trying to solve, there's no way we're gonna solve it. We can meet here for an hour. We can be like the wilderness, just Israelites, walking around looking at that same bush over and over, and never get anywhere.
Okay, so Ken is sharing kind of what I hear, and I'm not going to name this, but a little bit of frustration, because what is the conflict? It doesn't feel, what? Very frustrated? Total frustration. About kind of not knowing what the conflict is, but hearing about it for 2 years, kind of like this cloud of conflict, but not knowing what the conflict is. He doesn't want to wander like the Israelites.
So the workshops, unfortunately, aren't designed to go into depth. And I suspect, depending on who you talk with, there are different conflicts that people have experienced, or there are different hurts or disappointments that people are carrying around that have broken trust with each other. I will allow, obviously, space and time for people to raise those, but it is not abnormal in a congregation where there are people who are just like, I don't know what this conflict is about because everything's fine for me. That's normal. Sometimes it's not the entire congregation that is involved in one particular conflict, but there are pockets of conflict, pockets of hurts and disappointments that impact trust. And so, you know, we'll raise those as we can. And again, offline from these 3 workshops, we can absolutely, if you desire, focus on the specifics to move beyond the specifics.
Do you have a follow-up, Ken? I don't want to miss now. So, and what I'm seeing from him, just to kind of share, Susan, since you're not in the room, is kind of it's not okay to feel like this is always hanging Yeah,
Good.
Ken's here.
Hello, hi everybody. So, let's sort of level set here just for a second. I mean, absolutely understand the question. We've been, as you all know, and I want to put this all into context. So we've been on this journey together for the last 18 plus months, let's say 18 months, right? From the time it's sort of in May of 24, when we had a transition, we had a rector leave, right? So we all recall, sort of what was going on then. And there was a lot of frustration, there was a lot of surprise, there was a lot of hurt, there was a lot of sadness as a result of sort of how that all went down. And that's just at this point, that's just fact. And you'll recall, as part of the search, when we launched the search, we did the survey, the CAT survey. And coming back from the CAT survey, a lot of that got played back in a big way, in a very big and strong way. You remember we had 301 respondents to that survey. And that's where these folks came in. That's where Susan and Emily, but Susan did our interpretation for us. And she walked through that with us. What the data was telling us. That's sort of what it sort of said. Now, that was a point in time. That was June of 2024. We've come a long way. We've come a long way sort of as we've journeyed together. As was really, I think, evidenced by the event that we had in this very room last Wednesday with Father Doug's goodbye. This room was as full of energy and as full of people as I have ever seen it in just the 10 or 11, 12 years that I've been here. So we've come a long way. Now, that doesn't mean, though, in my opinion, this is now Ken's opinion, nobody else's, this doesn't mean that it's all rainbows, butterflies, and unicorns. So we could just decide that we're good. Let's just move on. Mother Sarah's going to be here on the 15th or the 10th, and we're going to move together in the next way. I would tell you, from my perspective, if something happens, it's not if. Something's going to happen again. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the issue is going to be. But I personally, as a parishioner, I don't want to go through this again. Or I at least don't want to be in a position where I know that we can interact with one another and sort of figure this out. So it doesn't become fractious. It doesn't become sort of a thing that distracts us from what it is that we were really meant to be, what our mission is, and things that we've been talking about today. So to be honest, my trepidation for this was it was going to kind of bring things back. I was talking to Father John earlier, he said, we're picking at a scab. I don't want to pick at a scab, but I want to be a realist to know that we've got to figure out how to be in community with each other even when we disagree. Because we will, there's no doubt. So that's what this is about. I'm not the expert here. These guys are the experts. But I personally am not looking, Ken's objectives, not Senior Warden Ken, just Ken as a parishioner. Ken's objectives is to pick up some skills and learn to be in community with each other in that way. So when somebody has something going on, that I'm going to ask the right questions. I'm going to engage in the right way. I'm going to listen before I speak. I'm going to give charitable assumptions to really understand where people are coming from. That's kind of what Ken wants to get out of this. So to the extent we need to sort of talk about what happened, we should talk about what happened. But I think that a lot of what this is a real opportunity for us to think about the future. We're about to enter in. So one of the things that the Holy Cow folks talk about is to go from transition to transformation. Yeah. I want to be a transformational parish. I think we have every tool and asset available to us to do that. I think this work can help further get us there. So I hope that helps, and I didn't mean to sort of hijack here, but that's sort of the context that I hope everybody can sort of think about. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Any anything to add to that, Susan?
No, that was wonderful, Ken. Thank you.
So again, we're thinking about, and the reason that I went through all of that today, again, is to really think about why are we doing this work together, right? And so, and to address your question too, that doesn't mean we can avoid talking about hard things we've been through. We might have to have some hard conversations still, right? But again, as we start to get more comfortable and get in a rhythm with how to do that well, then we become a community that continues to push forward, right? And that's what we need to do. Yes, yeah, one more question.
Yeah.
Susan, did you have something to add real quick, or do you want to?
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe this isn't the best analogy, but think about these 3 workshops as, there's a flu bug out there that's called the potential for conflict. And think about these workshops as your immunization, that you are going to build the immune system of the congregation in a way that when this bug comes around, as Ken said, we're bound as humans to be in conflict about something here, that your immune system is a lot stronger so that conflict doesn't grab you by the throat and, put you down in your sick bed for a long time.
Thank you. One more question.
Susan mentioned this, and I think it's very important. I think our problems are symptomatic and reflective of problems in the diocese.
Okay.
And the diocese problems are not going to be resolved for a year, if then. We're not going to have a new bishop before January of next year. And then we're going to have problems. And so, to some extent, I welcome this. It's going to give us tools to fix problems that are going to come as we heal this diocese. Oh, I need a hold.
That's okay. Thank you. Anything else? We ran over time, which is not my favorite, but I'm here for questions as long as you all want to stay. Any other questions? Oh, I've got someone back here. Is someone fake raising their hand? Is there someone? Oh, Father John. Sorry. I'm like going the complete opposite direction from Father John.
It's just an observation.
Yep. You have to use the mic though, or else you can't hear.
It's just an observation. Susan hears me all the time.
She loves it.
It's just an observation, but we're all sat here, traditionalists, millennials, whatever else we are, and Gen X is just down the way.
Yeah.
So scheduling is always fraught.
Yep.
But we're meeting here whilst the kids are down in the youth centre.
Yeah. Yep.
Just to say.
Right. That's Gen Z. Yeah. Yep. Got it. Okay. Oh, one more?
Well, no, I was just going to say, somebody mentioned the bishop search. I'm on the transition committee. The bishop's election will be happening on September 11th of this year. I'm not entirely sure about the date, that's a good thing. But a new bishop will be elected then. They won't be installed until the following year, but we will have a bishop, and I will be part of the transition team that will be getting that bishop in place and up and running. So they will be ready.
But I do want to say as well, is at the end of the day, as a congregation, we also are responsible for the health within our congregation too, right? And so what we want to learn is these practices so that no matter what's happening outside of this congregation, we can keep moving forward in a healthy way, right? So just keep that in mind. It's a yes and, right? It's a yes, we can have a healthy diocese, and we can be a healthy church, right? Okay. Susan, anything else you want to share before we finish up today?
No, thank you. Thank you, Emily.
Father John, would you close us in prayer? I just like to walk with the mic, so I'm going to go way back here.
The Lord be with you. Lord Jesus has said that when 2 or 3 are gathered together in his name, there you are in the midst. So we have claimed your presence amongst us as we have listened, as we have learned. And we ask that this may be the beginning of a new way of being in relationship one with another, a new way of being in relationship with Mother Sarah as she prepares herself to come and be with us as our priest and pastor, a new way of being in relationship with you. And all this we ask in the name of your Son, who is our Saviour and our Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.